Welcome back to the podcast. I'm getting ready to launch the 5th season of We Are Carbon at the moment, but this episode is a little bonus. Coming slightly sooner because really it's just been too long. I had the pleasure of speaking with Helen Meech, Executive Director of the Climate Coalition. Their campaign, The Great Big Green Week, has been building rapid momentum year to year, with millions of people across the UK anticipated to take action for their communities, nature, and the climate this week. It felt like a great opportunity to dig into some of my own ponderings around, can small steps taken locally really have the power to create the changes we want to see? I'll leave you to take your own conclusions around that as you listen through. And I hope you have a fabulous Great Big Green Week if you're taking part. Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date as the 5th season of the We Are Carbon podcast launches this summer. It'll be exciting. I'm Helen Fisher, and here is my conversation with Executive Director of the Climate Coalition, Helen Meech. Enjoy. Helen, thank you so much for joining us then. It really is a pleasure to have this opportunity to dig in and have this conversation. Would you like to kick us off with a quick introduction to yourself and perhaps touching upon some of the things along your journey that have brought you to the role that you're in today?
Yeah, really happy to, Helen, and thanks for inviting me to join you. So I'm Helen, I'm Executive Director of the Climate Coalition. The Climate Coalition is the UK's largest group of organisations dedicated for action for people, climate, nature. And we bring together big household name institutions like the National Trust and Save the Children, with faith groups, with youth groups, health organisations, and voluntary-led grassroots organisations too. So a real diverse group of organisations that believe in the both in the need to take action for people, climate and nature, but also share that core belief that people are powerful, especially when we come together. So that's about who I work for. A little bit about me. So I've been working in the environment sector for about 25 years now. I grew up in a rural area in Hampshire. I spent a lot of time outdoors as a child. I was obsessed with frog spawn. I spent a lot of my childhood experimenting, giving them different tadpoles, different foodstuffs. But I didn't have the easiest time at school, and nature was like my real solace. And I spent a lot of time playing outside, and I think that led to a really deep connection to nature. Nature is really important to me now, and has been throughout my life. And so because of that deep love of nature, I feel kind of an innate need to protect it. And so, from quite an early age, I knew I wanted to work in the environmental space. I didn't really know what that would look like or what that would mean. But I started out. I did a master's in nature conservation, and then just needed to find a job. And so I found a job as an office manager for another coalition, Wildlife and Countryside Link, who I still work with closely today. And through that, it was a fantastic induction, working with a range of organisations on different policy and campaigns. And I've kind of gone from there, worked in different policy roles, different campaigning roles, moved into public engagement, a little bit of brand stuff. I worked in consultancy for a while. I've done various CEO jobs now. And I guess a common theme that runs throughout everything that I've done is like, how do you really build the collective power that drives real change? It's been a kind of common theme through everything that I've done.
Excellent. That's fantastic. That really got me excited there talking about the frog spawn, because I thought I was the only strange child that was like playing with the insects, and my thing was woodlice, watching them, feeding them, keeping them in having a little woodlice home.
Me too.
I thought, maybe that's not something that you can share publicly, but let's celebrate it.
It's part of our stories. It's who we are.
It's wonderful, I think, that connection with nature really coming in at the start of this, because I think when we are talking about environmental care, climate concerns, it can always feel quite big and daunting. And that personal nature connection is such a powerful driving force. I've seen that not just in myself, but in other people that I've worked with and spoken with. Great Big Green Week, that seems to be a kind of core thing that's sort of connecting the Climate Coalition's work. Is that the primary focus that you have?
Great Big Green Week is our flagship campaign. Yeah, it's now in its 6th year. It originated around the time that the UK hosted the climate COP26 in Glasgow, and was designed as a way of showing the public mandate that exists for action, showing that communities across the UK are taking action. And from the first year back in 2021, where we had about 50 events, it's grown to last year we had just under 6,000 events, which engaged over 1.2 million people. And for me, what's exciting about that is not just the scale of the engagement, but who comes. So a third of people that came to Great Big Green Week events last year had never engaged in nature or climate before. They came because it was organised by somebody that they knew, or it was something in their community, or it was linked to the place where they live, or it was something free to do with the kids at the weekend. And lots of different motivations were coming, but they all left feeling that they both could and wanted to make a difference. So it's a really powerful moment.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of momentum be built around this locally. We've had Great Big Green Week celebrating and bringing people together in Lincoln for probably 3, if not 4 years, certainly of what I've been aware of. And I think it is, as you've said, it's that bringing people together that maybe they're not even there because they're campaigning or they're really advocating for anything to change, but they're connecting locally into these events that are taking place because at the core of it, there's someone in the community that's trying to bring that together. And over the years, it has been really interesting watching the ebb and flow of what happens around Great Big Green Week. And we often see it on the calendar many, many months in advance of, who's doing what and how can we, raise that awareness? Because it's nice sometimes to just have some sort of thing to pin down, isn't it?
It is. It provides Great Big Green Week provides a focal point in the year. So, communities across the UK are taking action all year round. But what Great Big Green Week does is provides that kind of focal point that allows us to join the dots across all the different projects and activities that are happening across the UK, helping people feel part of something bigger, but really platforming that moment as a moment for celebration. There's a technique that a colleague of mine who's a community organizer used where she talks about you meet, you act and celebrate. And Great Big Green Week is all about that celebration, but also about inviting others in, because as you say, it's you don't have to feel like you're an activist. And in fact, it's very deliberately designed to be inclusive and to invite everyone. Everybody can see themselves within it in some way. And so that sort of celebratory moment also is a really important way of inviting people in, showing them the actions that are happening near where they live, showing them how they could be part of it, but also the benefits of acting for them too, whether that's sort of opportunity to form connections with others in their community, to save money by lowering bills or by growing their own food. But opportunities to improve their mental health by spending more time outside and connecting with nature, whatever the reason might be. It's that really powerful invitation.
Bringing together of people, it has started with a focal point of what can we do to support environment in a lot of ways, but has really got a very, very holistic benefit. It's not just one layer. Do you think that is what makes it so powerful and so accessible for people?
Yeah, I think so. And we evaluate the campaign each year, and one of the indicators and outcomes I was really excited by is that communities that take part in Great Big Green Week feel more connected with others within their communities. So it's delivering impacts for climate and nature, by encouraging more people to get involved. It also is a really clear signal to both politicians and the wider UK public that others care. Is a lot of conversation in the UK about the silent majority, is that stat that 89% of people want climate action, but the people don't always see other people taking that action or calling for it publicly. So it allows people to see other people like them that also care, and that sort of sense of community and connection. Um, and it's also changing behaviours. Over 80% of people that come to Great Big Green Week events want to take more action and go on to do so. So it's got those multiple layers to it.
I think there's so many benefits that can't be measured when we look at things like local connection. And really, a lot of the challenge that we have, or that I've seen, is trying to offer people an understanding that they don't have to do a great big thing. It's Great Big Green Week, but you don't have to do a great big thing to make a difference. And often it's those little things that we can make into, whether it's a little thing that becomes something we do every week, or a little thing that actually creates a connective kind of snowball. Those small steps are really important. Do you think there's something about that coming together that is helping people to recognise that maybe year on year we're seeing those small steps build? Or do you think there is still a bit of a challenge in describing and really communicating the benefit of just the little things?
Yeah, I think there is still a challenge. You will hear kind of dissenting voices say, "Oh, what's the point in doing that? It's not really going to shift the dial on things." But if we all take action together, and if we all do a small thing, it does add up. And by coming together through the week itself, if you measure the impact of all of those perhaps smaller actions together, the overall impact of the change that happens through that week is enormous. And it's, as I said, it's both those direct changes, whether that is more habitat created or more Hoovers repaired in a repair cafe, more community gardens planted. There's both that direct impact, but there's also the impact of the stories that tells, the way that builds people's sense of power, the way it shows decision makers, both within government, so local government and national government, that people care and want them to act too, but also businesses. It shows them there's demand for more action from them too. So it has these sort of different layers and different ranges of impacts. But I think that feeling of belonging to something bigger really matters. Again, as part of our evaluation, when we talk to our event organisers, and we hear really loudly from them that feeling of being part of something bigger really, really matters.
Absolutely. So you have sort of observed and seen and been part of Great Big Green Week for a number of years. Are there any surprising relationships that you've seen formed during this time?
Yeah, there definitely are. So we are doing a lot of work, increasing amount of work this year with sports clubs, and who, especially if you sort of think of the stereotypical view of somebody that might organise a climate event, you perhaps might not associate it with your local football or rugby club, but actually sports organisations are doing a huge amount in this space. They're also really at the front line of climate impacts. A huge number of grassroots sports matches are cancelled every week because of weather impacts. So whether that is the pitch is too wet to play on, or whether it's too hot, and the temperature's too high for people to play their sport. They're on the front line of the climate impacts here in the UK, and so therefore those communities feel really compelled to take action. So there's been some really interesting link-ups between climate groups and sports clubs. There's also some of those groups that perhaps might not come together at a local level. So the local WI or Men's Shed working with the local school at events, or the local faith groups coming together and creating an interfaith event. There's been lots of different partnerships over the year, and it's one of the things that I think gives Great Big Green Week its magic.
Yeah, absolutely. You've spoken a little about the impact that local people coming together can have on policy, on local policy, and the discussions around politics in general. Are there any really telling experiences that say that this is having an impact with regards to policy?
Yes. So last year's Great Big Green Week was swiftly followed by a mass lobby of Parliament. So we had 1.2 million people engaging in Great Big Green Week, vast diversity of events all across the UK. And then some people who were involved in that then came to both to Westminster, but also then engaged with their MPs throughout the summer and into the autumn to share those stories, to tell their elected representative about what's happening in their community and why, but also calling upon those politicians to act as well. So one of the direct outcomes is we had a response from the Prime Minister, who recognised the importance of action, who recognised the power of Great Big Green Week, who welcomed folk coming and talking to their MP about it, and reiterated the current government's commitments to its clean power mission, and to the restoration of nature. So that felt like a really positive outcome, and something that we are continuing to use to hold the current government to account. So there are sort of big macro examples like that, but there are also much more localized examples from kind of local councillors coming out and hearing from their community and hearing about the importance of rolling out more safe cycling routes throughout their town or their village, and leading to changes there. So there's been lots of different responses to Great Big Green Week, and by inviting the mass lobby last year was a particular example, but every year we encourage event organisers to invite local politicians along, because politicians love to hear from their constituents. And by hearing from the diverse range of people that get involved in the week, it becomes impossible to ignore. Politicians are all driven by what they hear from their constituents. So if the volume is loud enough, and Great Big Green Week is a great way of really turning up that volume, then it does lead to policy change and action.
Congratulations. That it's really encouraging. I think that there's something when you're in a space locally, there's so many different voices and so many different ambitions, and some of the emotions are tense and some of them are exciting. And I think there's something so lovely about saying, well, this week we're just going to celebrate, we're going to come together, and we're going to kind of have a shared goal, and to be able to reach the politicians and bring them into that story. Yeah, congratulations. I think that's wonderful.
Thank you. And I think there's something about hope that feels important here. And I love the work of Rebecca Solnit. And so she talks about hope not being optimism and assuming everything will be okay, but it's also not about pessimism either. It's about hope her definition of hope is taking action. And I think that's what Great Big Green Week really embodies. It really embodies that action that communities are taking, and really platforms that hope in a way that really engages others.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that hope is, it's such a lovely little balance there, isn't it? In that quote that you said. I think there's something in this movement that is started with this coalition, and I like kind of the idea of just looking at how that comes together. You've got some really big names in there, and you've got some smaller people, and I think that collaboration and that connection locally between individuals is powerful. But also we have this opportunity to connect as organisations. Was you there right from the start? And how did it sort of come together?
Yeah, so I wasn't. TCC was founded over 20 years ago. And it started at a time where a range of organisations recognised both the risk but also the opportunity of acting together. So it was founded by a small group of, at that time, national organisations. So the RSPB and Friends of the Earth, and a couple of others were at that sort of founding roundtable. And since then, it has grown over time, and those sort of links to grassroots communities have sort of grown over time. I think the climate movement has changed a lot in the time that TCC has existed. I think increasingly there have become a wider range of local groups, but also I think the intersectional nature of the climate and nature crises have become more and more apparent. So groups who, perhaps wouldn't always have seen themselves as seen sort of climate as something that's for them now do. Sports is a brilliant example of that we've spoken to. But faith groups, development groups, health groups, parenting groups, increasingly, those intersections and the co-benefits of taking action. If you take action for nature, cleaner air, cleaner water, it has lots of benefits for health and too. So, I think the coalition has become broader over that period of time.
Yeah, and that feels like it really goes hand in hand with the Great Big Green Week itself, because you are reaching so many different people, but also bringing people together locally means inevitably lots of diversity. Each of
Yes.
those kind of groups coming together is far more impactful, or has its own kind of unique benefit around Great Big Green Week than people all over the country, but we've got a shared focus. And so, I think there has definitely been a trend, and I hope that it continues, in that people recognise that it's not something outside of them, but it's part of the world that we live in. We all kind of want clean air and clean water and a nice space to go outside and have a walk. It really doesn't feel like anyone should be excluded from that discussion, but having that opportunity to come together locally, sometimes it's challenging, isn't it? It's challenging to bring people together, to motivate them, to find that you're just so busy and there's so many things vying for our attention. How do you support people around Great Big Green Week so that they can say, okay, well, we're going to try doing something and we would like to host an event? Do you offer any kind of support around that?
Yeah, we do. We recognise that lives are really, really busy, and there's multiple competing demands on people's time. So we try and make it as easy as possible. So there are, a Great Big Green Week event doesn't have to be great big. It can be as simple as just inviting your local neighbours together to share some food and share some ideas together. Events can be hyper local and very simple. Some events last all week long and have multiple elements to them and a big program, and all are welcome and all are celebrated as part of the week. In terms of the support that we provide written resources for folk that prefer that. There's kind of an on our website, greatbiggreenweek.com, there's an A to Z of events that gives sort of inspiration of the sorts of events that you could organise. But we also have a training package that you can choose the training that's right for you. And that ranges from everything from how to fundraise from your events, how to engage your politicians, how to tell your story, both to the media, but also how to tell your story on social media. We have an offering this year of a range of films that communities can screen as part of an event, and then we've got some training around how to run an effective film screening and how to facilitate a conversation afterwards. So there's a vast range of different trainings that we provide, and we're also, for those that want to, offer sort of training all year round around like how to build links with your community, how to find your people, and wider campaigning activity.
Yeah, because obviously 1 week is fantastic in that, like we've said, it sort of pins people to a time and it brings people together. But presumably your work is looking every week of the year and hoping that things are moving. Is there anything sort of particular that you do around that continues the motion?
So yeah, Great Big Green Week for us does wrap all year round. The week itself is the big spotlight. That's when we sort of try and get as much comms activity as we can, lots of media and sort of this real intense spotlight of action. But for us, the work continues all year round, working with our membership to co-create our priorities, to take the stories and the evidence from Great Big Green Week to politicians as a way of calling for change, to co-create policy asks with our membership, but also with communities. A lot of our work, we try and join up grassroots community groups with those big national organisations that have been part of our membership from the start and find common ground.
Brilliant. What does that look like?
The co-creation itself.
Yeah. What sort of bringing those grassroots with the organisations? It sounds like a really interesting relationship to build. So anything, yeah, how that works and what results you get.
It is fascinating, and it leads to really, really rich conversation because you've got such diverse perspectives, especially given the range of topics that our different members and communities that we work with are working on and interested in. In terms of how co-creation works, we tend to do it online so that we can ensure that we can involve people from as many places across the UK and beyond as we can. And we will usually sort of provide a little bit of stimulus, a little bit of content, some ideas, and then invite smaller group conversation and try and hold a space so that every voice is heard. So it's not just those who are used to being on Zoom calls all day long and have the confidence to speak, but we try and ensure that we work so that everybody can have their voice heard. And then we harvest the outcomes and then sort of play it back to folk. It tends to be a bit of an iterative process and we'll build things over time.
Yeah, absolutely. These things it's really interesting, I think, looking back because it can feel like a slow process, but it's that reflective time that often you realise just how much has accumulated and how much has been learnt and connected. So I imagine that's no different, that is actually really very insightful.
Yeah. I think that space for reflecting and learning together is really, really important, and we try and build that into our cycles of work. So we're not just sort of plan, do, review, and on to the next thing, but we're making sure that we're measuring and we're learning and sharing those learnings and bringing folk together to share learnings across the coalition, so that if you are a community organizer in Lincoln, you can be teamed up with somebody who might be, a national campaigner in Croydon and can kind of share perspectives and learnings. And we become a richer and more connected movement the more we do of this work.
Yeah, sounds good fun. I think there's something that is coming through here about fun. It feels like Great Big Green represents a attitude of celebration and hope and fun. Is that accurate, or is there also a layer that's quite tapping into the anxieties that have been kind of percolating in society, or do you see it as a mix?
So there's no stepping away from the science of the climate crisis and of nature loss. The outlook is pretty scary. But I think there can be a tendency for climate communications, especially in the past, to be quite doomy. And if you are not presented with agency, fear without agency leads to inaction and inertia. So I think a feeling of being able to have some agency, knowing the actions that you can take, but also for it to feel fun and for it to feel joyful, coming together and taking action with communities, or just coming together as a community, is often one of the most joyful things that you can do to find that sense of belonging and connection with others. So that's really at the heart of the week, is kind of is both the action but also that sense of community. Our theme this year is Together for Good, and we've chosen that theme very, very deliberately because it is that sense of belonging. We know that that's important to folk that have been in Great Big Green Week before, but we also know that it's important from research that's done by, for example, our partners at Climate Outreach have done a huge survey of the UK public, multiple focus groups, and have looked at what motivates action across different segments of society. And that feeling of connection to others, that you're not on your own with it, that change is possible, like that really matters across the board.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting because again, there's so many benefits to that coming together that aren't immediately seen and recognized, but just that sense of belonging, so powerful. And I think people like to see that they're not on their own with it, don't they? And that's not just in that it soothes feeling anxious. Actually, there's a little bit of permission there in, yeah, let's get on and do this. Because
Yeah.
sometimes we sit back and we think, oh, well, I'd love to start a community garden, or I'd love to start a repair cafe, or something that feels inspiring but daunting to do alone. And as you, just see these people come together, I do think that it leads to action just because you've come together. And that isn't always immediate, and I think that's something that I've really recognised, is it can be okay to just come together and enjoy yourselves and have wonderful connections and a nice conversation, and then something percolates, and maybe it's not for a couple of years, but you recognise that across the board, those initial meetings and little group catch-ups, they kind of become something, and it's not immediately obvious. And so I think that's something I'd like to just really kind of add into that, is you don't have to put the pressure on to really push it forward. Just let it be and let it percolate is kind of, it's a nice place to be at.
Yeah, I think some of the best things in life start with a conversation over a nice cup of tea. And conversation really matters. I think with things like the climate crisis and other kind of systemic issues that we face as society, too often people don't talk about them. But actually, by talking about it, you can better understand others' perspectives. It can help reduce the sense of polarization, which I think is really acutely felt here in the UK at the moment, particularly through politics and through mainstream media. But by talking to others, you can deepen that understanding, and it can lead to action. That from what is to what if. I love that book by Rob Hopkins, and conversation often can kind of help drive those sort of processes of, well, this is how this is in the moment, but what if that was different? What if we could take control of that piece of land and create a community garden? Or what if we came together and I love the story of Ambition Lawrence Weston in Bristol, close to where I live, who together as a community came together and they built the biggest wind turbine in England, which is both bringing direct income to the community and helping lower their energy bills. But that started with conversation. It started with people going around knocking doors saying, what do you think about living here, and what do you want and what do you need? And it was, we need good food that we can afford, that we can get locally, and we need our energy bills to come down, and we need more affordable housing. And they've helped deliver all of those things in a relatively short period of time. But it starts with talking to people.
Yeah, talking to people. And I think people recognizing that it's safe to share their opinion, and it doesn't hurt to be heard. Sometimes that in itself kind of is the challenging point. And I think things around Great Big Green Week, I imagine are opening the door to those conversations in a bigger way than you probably even realise.
We hope so. We hope so, yeah.
So there's so much happening. I know that the numbers have been really building over the years. Is it something that you anticipate to sort of go in that direction, more and more people getting involved?
Yeah, we certainly hope so. So last year, 1.2 million people got involved through events. This year, we're anticipating about 2 million people. And we're hoping by 2029, we'll have 5 million people engaging in events. Year on year, we see those who've organised events previously often want to do it again. And often they will meet others in their event. And so the group that they're working with expands, or they'll see that there are other events happening locally and team up. So it sort of gains a bit of momentum that way. But we've also seen more organisations that want to get involved. So whether that be businesses, sports groups, all can sort of see the opportunity of sharing their story at a time when others are talking about these topics, and when there is such a strong groundswell of community activity. So we really hope that it will continue to grow, and we hope that we've spoken a bit about the silent majority. We know the vast majority of people want this, want action. They want to take action themselves, but they also want others to act. And so this is a way we see of, by making the events really local, really connected to place, run by people that folk trust, by those trusted messengers, that they feel really relevant to them and their community and their needs. We hope that this will help give that silent majority a voice.
Mm-hmm. Do you see that happening?
We do. So last year, as part of Great Big Green Week, we invited people to share an image of something that they care about, that means that they want to take action. And we had thousands and thousands of images submitted, and we worked with a visual artist at the People's Picture, Helen, to create a mosaic artwork, which we projected onto the White Cliffs of Dover. And that was a really a very emotional moment, actually, because it really it visually brought to life the range of both of people who care, but also the reasons and motivations that they care. It was an incredibly powerful moment. So that's sort of an example of how we've tried to give that silent majority a voice, but it's something we're continuing to work on, and we're continuing to find different ways. But year on year, we see more and more people coming together, more and more people talking to the media directly themselves, telling their own stories on social media, and at a time when the debate can feel increasingly polarized, it feels more important than ever that we continue to support this work.
I really enjoy the I haven't seen the image on the White Cliffs of Dover, but it sounds really fascinating, very powerful. In terms of the themes that cropped up of what is motivating people, what was it that you were seeing there?
Primarily love. I think love is the most powerful motivator of action always, but love of friends, of family members, of place, of nature, of home. Those strong sort of, that sense of love, of pride, of connection. Those themes all came through really strongly.
Amazing. And that love of place, that in itself, that idea of home being not just perhaps the four walls that we live in, but the community around us as well. I think that's something that can really instigate so much movement towards action, because we don't always feel like it's easy to penetrate that or even visualize what that might be. But these types of meetups and connections that are local, I think, build upon that sense of love of home and love of place.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And what we see so much through Great Big Green Week is people, they're not environmentalists, but they come out because they care about the place where they live, and so they'll go out and do a litter pick, or they'll go out and do some tree planting, or whatever the activity is. It's driven by a pride of place, and wanting to make the place where you live better. So either kind of, celebrating it, or finding ways to improve it. And sometimes what's needed to do that is just an invitation. And I think that's what Great Big Green Week often provides, that invitation to come in and to get involved. There's another lovely story about an organisation, East Marsh United, where it was an area in Grimsby that was what some people would describe as left behind. And then one local resident just decided to do something about it. And so one Sunday, he got a load of brooms, and he's like, "Right, we're gonna sweep the street." And from that initial street sweeping session, that organisation has grown, and they now own a whole bunch of housing. There's a real pride of place in the area. They've done lots of tree planting along the roads to provide some shade to those homes in the summer. They've done a whole raft of activities, but it all started with Billy going out with his broom, and inviting people
That's
to get involved.
powerfully inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I imagine that Billy wouldn't have had any idea that he could have supported people in getting homes and all those bigger things that it sounds like they're doing. That, you're right, it is just an invitation. It's a bit of coordination, a little bit of recognizing that it's safe to speak to the people around you, safe to be heard, perhaps, but mostly, yeah, an invitation. Let's give it a go. Whatever that is that feels like it's top on the agenda. Really powerful stuff. Do you feel that there has been, like, all of these years of building up the momentum, so it's kind of going in this really good direction, but at the same time, we are seeing a lot of kind of going in the other direction in terms of the bigger picture of things? Do you feel that they're sort of linked somehow, in that people are more aware and therefore feeling more strongly that they want change?
I think people definitely want change. A lot of people, life's hard, for all of us. Just putting food on the table, paying the bills, it's getting harder and harder. And so people do want change. I guess the question is to think about, where is that change going to come from? And I think, one of the reasons why Great Green Week has grown is it does invite people in and show them that you can make a change yourself. You don't have to rely on somebody else to do it for you. But also, by coming together and showing, visibly building the future that we all want, which is where we have warm homes, where we have good food to eat, where our kids have safe places to play, we have clean water to drink, clean air to breathe. By building that, it enables a really positive message to be shown to decision makers, whether in government or business, and creates the space. People can create the space for politics to move into.
Yes, it's a really interesting dynamic, that, isn't it? It's I think that there has been a long time where people, or perhaps maybe still is, in that place where they're wanting desperately to be heard by the politicians to make the change, as though that's kind of the only way to push it forward. But you've just explained several stories that demonstrate that actually that's not the case. And oftentimes the things that we do want in our local place in particular, by coming together, we have the resources to connect and to share and to collaborate. So yeah, very, very powerful stuff. Thank you so much for sharing. In terms of your own personal aspirations, if there's one thing that you feel is needed, say, creating a future that we all really want to see, is there anything that you would love to see more of?
What would I love to see more of? So I find it very hard to choose one thing. Um, but two things that are personally really important to me. Um, so one is food growing. I'm a really keen gardener. Um, I love to grow my own food. I remember really distinctly a few years ago I was working as a consultant and I was in a cafe with a colleague and there was a poster on the wall that said, "Growing is resistance, resistance is fertile." And that has really, it was a lino cut print, and I can still, when I think of it, I can still see it so clearly. Um, and I really feel that when I grow my own veg. And it's become, for me, a real kind of outlet and something really supportive of my mental health. Both that sort of time outdoors and getting my hands in the soil, but also that feeling that I'm building my own resistance and resilience of my family. That really, really matters to me. And the other thing for me is rewilding. I'm a really keen rewilder. Nature has an innate capacity to heal itself if we give it the space to do so. Yeah, I'm a real firm believer in the power of rewilding, and so I would love to see more space given over to nature so it can do its thing.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate everything that you've shared with us. Is there anything that you would like to sort of direct people to if they want to learn more?
Well, we would love all of your listeners to get involved in Great Big Green Week. So whether that's by going to an event or organising one yourself, as I said, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be as simple as a conversation with some friends, family, or neighbours. So if folk go to our website, greatbiggreenweek.com, from there you can find an event near you or find resources around how to organise your own. But yeah, the more that we come together, the more power that we have. So yeah, everybody's invited.
Brilliant. And I think I don't think we've mentioned it. So just say to everybody, when is Great Big Green Week this year?
Very good point. Yeah, Great Big Green Week this year runs from the 6th to the 14th of June.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of We Are Carbon. You'll find links in the description to learn more about the Climate Coalition's work. And be sure to subscribe here to stay up to date with the podcast. I'm Helen Fisher. This is We Are Carbon. And let's keep figuring this all out together.